There's a dangerous habit that silently weakens your presence, your mind, and your power, and most people don't even realize they're doing it. Reacting emotionally to everything, every look, every comment, every shift in tone. If your emotional state depends on what someone else says or does, you've already handed over control. That's not strength. That's instability. That's weakness disguised as passion. When in reality, it's undisciplined reactivity. You cannot lead, protect, or elevate anything if every trigger drags you down with it. Emotional reactivity isn't just exhausting. It's destructive. It makes you unpredictable. It makes people cautious around you. And most of all, it blocks your ability to think clearly. Because the moment your emotions take over, logic goes out the window. You stop hearing what's actually being said and start reacting to what you think it means. You get defensive. You shut down. You lash out. You become so busy feeling everything that you forget to assess anything. People who are ruled by emotion live in constant chaos. They ride every wave, every insult, every inconvenience like it's a personal attack. And eventually they burn out. Not because the world is cruel, but because they never built the skill of internal control. They think strength is in being loud, in being expressive, in fighting every battle. But real strength is restraint. Real power is the ability to hold tension without collapsing under it. To feel deeply but not act impulsively. To be provoked and still choose composure over reaction. Reacting emotionally is like playing a game where everyone else holds your remote. Someone pushes your buttons and you jump. They criticize you and you shrink. They ignore you and suddenly you spiral. You're not in control, they are. And if anyone can hijack your peace that easily, you are not operating from strength. You are operating from emotional dependency. It doesn't matter how confident you look on the outside if you can be internally shaken by every opinion thrown your way. The truth is, life will test you. People will test you. Not once, over and over. The world is not designed to protect your feelings. It will offend you, disrespect you, disappoint you. And if your reaction every time is emotional chaos, you'll stay trapped in patterns you never outgrow. The people who win in life, in business, in relationships, aren't the ones who feel the least. They're the ones who've trained themselves to feel everything, but respond only when it's strategic. They've mastered the pause between stimulus and response, and in that pause, they take back their power. When someone says something that offends you, stop. Don't defend. Don't argue. Don't try to explain yourself. Pause. Ask yourself, is this actually about me? Or is this about their own insecurities? When plans fall apart or people act out, don't take it personally. Observe. Detach. Stay objective. Because the second you allow your emotions to run wild, you've handed the situation over to chaos. And chaos doesn't lead. It destroys. The ability to regulate yourself is one of the highest forms of intelligence. You don't need to respond to everything. You don't need to explain everything. Not every provocation deserves your energy. Some things are meant to be ignored. Some people want a reaction because your reaction gives them control. Don't hand it to them. Let silence become your strength. Let composure become your weapon. Let your stillness speak for you. This isn't about being numb. It's about being responsible. You are responsible for the energy you bring into a room, for the way you carry yourself under pressure, for the impact your emotions have on others. Emotional reactivity turns you into someone who cannot be trusted with high-stakes situations. Because if you can't handle tension without losing your mind, no one is going to hand you power. Power gravitates to stability, to calm, to people who can hold the storm without becoming it. You want to be respected. Start by regulating your tone. Watch your body language. Control your breathing. Command your presence. Even when your heart is racing, you will not always feel calm, but you can always choose calm behavior. And that choice made consistently becomes your new standard. It becomes your default under pressure. It becomes the difference between people listening to your words and people watching you unravel. This takes practice. It takes awareness. Start small. Next time you're triggered, don't speak right away. Breathe, count, step away if you need to. Recenter. Because that 1 second between your emotion and your response is where your power lies. The more you practice choosing it, the less control your emotions have over you. And that is what separates the strong from the weak. The weak collapse. The strong command. There is no faster way to weaken yourself than needing other people to tell you who you are. If your confidence rises and falls based on likes, comments, compliments, or applause, then you're not strong. You're dependent. And that dependency becomes your leash. People can lead you around with approval. They can manipulate you with silence, because as long as you rely on external validation to feel worthy, you'll constantly be chasing something that was never meant to come from outside of you. Validation feels good. That's the trap. It's addicting. It hits the same pleasure centers in your brain as a drug. The praise, the likes, the recognition, they're like sugar for the ego. But what happens when it stops? What happens when people stop clapping, when they stop noticing, when the room goes quiet? If you've built your strength on being seen, then invisibility will break you. And people who can be broken by being ignored are not in control of their own power. You want to be strong. You want to walk into a room and command respect. Then stop needing people to confirm your value. Confidence is built in the dark, not under the spotlight. It's built when no one's watching, when you show up for yourself even when no one else sees it. If you only work hard when people are watching, if you only believe in yourself when you're being praised, then what you have is performance, not strength. You've trained yourself to perform for love, not lead from self-respect. People who chase validation live in fear. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. So they shape-shift, they become what others want. They stay silent when they should speak. They say yes when they mean no. They dress, act, talk, and move in ways that are designed to get approval instead of express identity. And the more you do this, the further you drift from yourself. Until one day you don't even recognize who you've become, just a mirror of everyone else's expectations. Validation seeking keeps you in small rooms, because the moment someone challenges you, disagrees with you, or criticizes you, you shrink. You take it personally. You see disagreement as rejection. You see silence as failure. But strong people don't operate like that. They don't fold when people disapprove. They don't soften their voice just to be liked. They don't live on edge waiting for someone to say, "Good job." They validate themselves through discipline, through integrity, through the quiet confidence of doing what's right even when it goes unnoticed. Start asking yourself, why do I need this compliment? Why do I feel small when I don't get it? Where did I learn that I'm only worthy when I'm praised? Because once you get clear on the roots, you can start cutting the habit. The goal isn't to reject all praise. It's to stop being controlled by the absence of it. There's nothing wrong with enjoying compliments. What's dangerous is needing them to function. You build internal validation by keeping promises to yourself. When you say you'll wake up early, and you do it, that's validation. When you say you'll eat clean, show up, train, push through, and follow through, that's validation. Every small discipline is a vote for self-respect. And when you stack enough of those votes, you no longer need other people to tell you who you are. You already know you also need to get comfortable with disapproval. Not everyone will like you. And if you're trying to be liked by everyone, you'll be respected by no one. Strong people are polarizing, not because they're rude, but because they're clear. They know who they are. They stand firm in their truth. And when you stand firm, some people will challenge you. Let them. Their discomfort isn't your responsibility. Their silence doesn't mean you're wrong. The only validation that truly matters is the one that comes from the person in the mirror. If you want to eliminate weakness, stop explaining yourself to people who aren't listening. Stop watering yourself down to be accepted. Stop living like you need permission to be powerful. That need is an illusion. You were never supposed to earn your value through applause. You were supposed to own it, breathe it, show up in it, regardless of who notices. Validation isn't leadership. Leadership is knowing your worth before anyone else sees it. Leadership is moving forward even when no one claps. Leadership is being rooted in self-respect so deeply that external approval becomes a bonus, not a requirement. That's what strength looks like. Not the loudest person in the room, not the one who's always praised, but the one who doesn't flinch when the applause stops. Weakness gets built in quiet moments when you choose comfort over challenge. Every time you say, "I'll do it tomorrow." Every time you avoid a conversation because it's uncomfortable. Every time you back away from something that scares you, you're reinforcing the habit of running from pressure. And the problem isn't the fear. The problem is the pattern. You're teaching your nervous system that hard things are to be avoided, not confronted. You're training yourself to shrink instead of expand. People think strength comes from size, sound, confidence. But real strength is built in your relationship with discomfort. How do you handle pressure? How do you act when nothing feels certain? How do you show up when the plan falls apart? That's what reveals your core. And if your default behavior is to retreat, delay, hide, or numb, then you're not getting stronger, you're just getting better at escaping. Escape is not a strategy, it's a slow form of self-sabotage. Comfort has become the new drug of choice. It's everywhere. We're told to protect our peace, avoid hard people, prioritize rest, and chase ease. But comfort, unearned comfort, kills more potential than failure ever could. Every time you avoid discomfort, you miss an opportunity to level up. Because pressure is what sharpens you. Stress handled right is what stretches you. And everything you want, the confidence, the clarity, the power, it lives on the other side of that temporary discomfort you keep running from. If you want to build strength, start leaning into the hard things. Have the conversation. Make the decision. End what needs to end. Start what scares you. Do the thing that makes your stomach turn, your voice shake, your hands sweat. Because that feeling, the resistance, the tension, that's not a warning sign to retreat. That's the invitation to grow. And most people miss it because they're too busy trying to feel good instead of trying to be good. You have to retrain your mind to stop flinching at discomfort. When you wake up and don't feel like showing up, do it anyway. When your emotions try to talk you out of the hard path, go down it anyway. The more you do this, the more evidence you give yourself that you can. And confidence is built through evidence. Every time you act against your weakness, you're reinforcing your strength. It's not the motivation that builds the muscle. It's the repetition. Avoiding discomfort keeps you stuck in cycles. You stay in jobs you hate because the unknown is uncomfortable. You stay in relationships that drain you because being alone feels hard. You don't pursue what lights you up because the risk of failure is too much to bear. So you settle. And the longer you settle, the more you start to believe you're not capable of more. That belief is a lie. It didn't come from truth. It came from the fact that you haven't challenged yourself in a long time. Look at your life and ask, where am I choosing easy over right? Where am I hiding behind comfort and calling it peace? Where am I letting fear dictate my next move? Because that's the enemy. It's not the challenge. It's the internal story that says you can't handle the challenge. That voice that whispers, stay here, it's safer. That's the voice you need to get aggressive with. Not by yelling at it, but by proving it wrong with action. Not once. Over and over. There's a level of self-respect that only comes from doing hard things. It's quiet. It doesn't need applause. But it changes how you walk into a room, because you know you didn't run when it got real. You didn't flinch. You didn't fold. You stood up, walked through the fire, and came out stronger. Not because it was easy, but because you were willing to bleed for something better. That is what separates the average from the elite. Discomfort builds callus, mental callus, emotional callus. And you need those if you're going to move through life with strength. Not to harden your heart, but to stabilize your mind. Because the world doesn't get easier. The path doesn't get smoother. But you get stronger, you get smarter. You learn how to navigate storms without collapsing every time it rains. That's what strength looks like. Not a perfect life, but an unshakable response. So stop romanticizing comfort. Stop acting like peace comes from avoiding pressure. Real peace comes from knowing you can handle whatever life throws at you. That you're not owned by fear. That you can walk through fire and keep your integrity intact. That no matter how uncomfortable it gets, you trust yourself to figure it out. That's not just strength. That's freedom. There's a moment in every decision when your mind starts spinning, analyzing, doubting, rehearsing every possible outcome. And that moment is where most people lose. Not because they aren't capable, but because they overthink themselves into weakness. Overthinking doesn't make you smarter. It just makes you slower, less confident, more unsure. You start with momentum and end with hesitation. You trade clarity for confusion and action for paralysis. That habit will break your potential long before failure ever will. Thinking is good. Planning is good. But there is a fine line between strategy and stalling. The second your thoughts become loops, repetitive, circular, never leading to action, that's the moment they stop helping you. That's the trap. You trick yourself into believing you're being responsible, that you're weighing your options, when in reality, you're just afraid. And fear disguised as logic is still fear. You can dress it up in spreadsheets, conversations, and brainstorming all day long. But if you're not acting, you're hiding. You don't grow by sitting in the planning stage. You grow when you move. When you test, when you fall flat, regroup and try again. Execution is where growth happens. You can read all the books, listen to all the podcasts, gather all the opinions. But none of it matters if you don't apply it. People who are addicted to overthinking don't lack knowledge. They lack movement. They're stuck in the illusion of progress, running in place while convincing themselves they're moving forward. The longer you overthink, the more power you give to fear. Because every second you wait is another second for doubt to get louder. It starts whispering, what if I fail? What if I look stupid? What if this isn't the right move? And the more you listen, the more you hesitate. That hesitation creates a habit, and habits build identity. So you become the person who never starts, who always waits, who talks big and moves small. That identity is not based on your truth. It's built from your inaction. Strong people don't need to be 100% certain to move. They move at 70%, sometimes less. Because they trust that motion creates clarity, that the lessons they need are found in the doing, not the thinking. They know that failure is information, not identity. So they get in the room, they make the call. They take the first step, not because they're fearless, but because they refuse to stay stuck in the waiting room of life. You will never outthink fear. You can only outwork it. Action neutralizes anxiety. When you're moving, building, facing the unknown, you don't have time to spiral. You're too busy learning, too busy adapting, too busy becoming. And the more you do that, the quieter your doubt becomes, because your brain stops seeing discomfort as danger and starts seeing it as the normal price of growth. And that rewiring is how you go from mentally fragile to mentally formidable. Start acting faster, not recklessly, but decisively. Make a choice and move. Set a deadline and keep it. Stop giving yourself time to second guess what you already know you need to do. You don't need a new strategy. You need to follow through on the ones you've been ignoring. Pick something. Commit. Course correct as you go. This isn't about perfection. It's about momentum. And momentum only exists in motion, never in theory. Overthinking is a form of control. You want to have all the answers before you begin. You want to guarantee success before you risk anything. But life doesn't work like that. There is no perfect time, no perfect move. No scenario where you're fully ready and fully safe. Waiting for it keeps you stuck. Strong people don't wait. They work with what they have. They make the call, they take the shot, they face the risk. And because they're willing to do that, they win more often. Not because they're better, but because they're in the game longer. You don't get stronger by thinking about what you should do. You get stronger by doing it, especially when it's uncomfortable. That uncomfortable action is your rep, your set, your training ground. Every time you push through indecision and act, you're building mental resilience. You're teaching your nervous system that it doesn't need certainty to act, that it can move anyway, that it can trust itself even in the dark. The most successful, unshakable people in the world are not the ones who made the best choices. They're the ones who made choices and kept going. They didn't freeze every time the plan shifted. They didn't let analysis become avoidance. They moved, learned, adjusted. And by doing that again and again, they outperformed people who were more talented, more educated, more prepared. But too stuck in their heads to act. You don't need more time. You don't need another opinion. You don't need the perfect plan. You need to move. Most people don't realize how much strength is wasted through the mouth. The habit of speaking without discipline is one of the most underestimated ways you weaken yourself. Every time you overshare, speak impulsively, gossip, or react verbally without control, you're leaking power. Your words are not just sound. They carry energy, intention, identity. And if you can't control your mouth, you cannot control your image, your influence, or your mind. People think speaking first is a sign of intelligence. It's not. Speaking last is. Speaking with intention is. Choosing silence when the ego wants to speak is. Power doesn't rush. Power observes. It listens. It calculates. Then it speaks. Clean, clear, precise. Weakness, on the other hand, fills the room with noise. It seeks to be heard, to be right, to be liked. So it talks and talks without purpose, without structure, without self-check. That's not communication. That's emotional leakage disguised as honesty. When you speak without discipline, you betray yourself. You say things you can't take back. You react to things that didn't deserve a response. You reveal more than people earned. You burn bridges you didn't need to burn. You invite chaos. You feed drama. You lose mystery, you lose respect, and you lose power. Because strong people don't broadcast everything they feel. They choose what deserves their voice, and what deserves their silence. Gossip is a weak person's hobby. It feels powerful in the moment, but it always exposes more about you than the person you're talking about. When you gossip, you tell the world you're not safe, that your loyalty is flexible, that you need connection through tearing others down. That's not strength. That's fear. That's insecurity. That's proof you need to build inner value instead of feeding off others' reputations. Oversharing is another trap. It's the attempt to fast-track connection. But connection without discernment isn't powerful. It's messy. When you overshare, you give people access to parts of you they haven't earned. And not everyone deserves access. People take notes. They watch how you talk about others. They hear what you reveal in stress. And if you hand out your personal life like free samples, you become predictable, exposed, and vulnerable to manipulation. Discipline in speech is about knowing your audience, your intention, and your purpose. You don't need to comment on everything. You don't need to explain yourself to people who aren't listening. You don't need to fill every silence. Sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing. Silence forces people to sit with themselves. Silence makes people wonder. Silence creates space for power to build. Weak people talk because they fear what silence might reveal. Strong people use silence as strategy. You don't need to defend yourself every time you're misunderstood. You don't need to clap back at every insult. You don't need to prove your intelligence in every room. That's ego. And ego is reactive. Intelligence is selective. Self-respect is measured in what you choose not to say, in how you withhold when your emotions beg for release. That's where strength lies. Not in verbal dominance, but in verbal discipline. Control your tone. Your tone carries more weight than your words. You can say all the right things and still lose credibility if your tone is insecure, arrogant, defensive, or passive. Speak with weight, not volume. Speak with calm, not chaos. Speak with command, not desperation. The more you master your tone, the more people listen. Even when you say less, before you speak, ask yourself, is this true? Is this necessary? Is this helpful? If the answer is no, don't say it. Not because you're scared, but because you respect the power of your own voice too much to waste it. Every word is either building your image or breaking it. Every conversation is a window into your emotional intelligence. Every response is a mirror showing how much control you truly have over your impulses. Train your mind to pause before you speak. That pause is everything. It's where you decide if your words are intentional or emotional. That moment separates strong communicators from reactive ones. Most people talk to relieve pressure. Strong people speak to create direction. They don't vent. They articulate. They don't react. They respond. That shift, when practiced daily, becomes your edge. Speech is a weapon. Use it wisely or it will wound you. Use it with awareness or it will betray you. You don't need more words. You need sharper words. Cleaner words, cleaner words. Words that land without chaos. That pierce through noise. That reflect discipline, restraint, and self-command. There is a habit that quietly kills potential faster than failure, louder than rejection, and more consistently than fear. Excuses. Every time you make one, you rob yourself of power. You trade accountability for comfort. You trade movement for stagnation. And worst of all, you protect your weakness instead of fixing it. Excuses don't keep you safe, they keep you stuck. And the more you use them, the more skilled you become at lying to yourself. Excuses are seductive. They always sound logical. I'm too tired. No's not the right time. It's not fair. They didn't support me. It's just how I am. But peel back the words and what you find is fear. Fear of change. Fear of effort. Fear of responsibility. Excuses exist to soften that fear, to make it feel justified, to protect your ego from the pain of growth. But comfort built on excuses is nothing more than a trap disguised as safety. People who make excuses are excellent storytellers. They build entire narratives around why they can't, why it's too late, why others have it easier. But storytelling isn't action, it's distraction, and while they're telling stories, life moves on. Opportunities pass, confidence erodes, and every excuse becomes a brick in the wall they're building around their own limitations. You can either be the person who builds reasons or the one who builds results. You don't get to be both. The most dangerous part of excuse making is that it creates a victim mindset. When your life becomes a string of reasons why you can't, you unconsciously give away your agency. You put your future in the hands of external forces, your past, your parents, your boss, your environment. And the moment you do that, you're no longer the one steering your life. Victimhood feels safe because it absolves you from doing the hard work, but it also strips you of the only thing that can change your life, your ability to choose differently. Strong people don't entertain excuses. They see them, hear them, feel them, and override them. Not because it's easy, but because they've made a decision that their future matters more than their feelings. They wake up tired and still train. They feel fear and still speak. They don't wait for the right time, they create it. Because once you stop giving yourself an exit route, everything changes. You show up differently when you know quitting isn't an option. When you eliminate excuses, your standards rise and your identity shifts. Excuses also make you emotionally fragile. If you constantly justify your actions, you never build resilience. You never learn to sit in discomfort. You never develop grit. Strength is built through resistance, and excuses protect you from ever feeling it. So you stay soft. You crumble under criticism. You avoid confrontation. You panic under pressure. Because you've trained yourself to seek the path of least resistance, not the path of most growth. Want to find your excuses? Look at your patterns. The goals you keep setting but never hitting. The behaviors you keep repeating. The promises you break to yourself. Your excuses are hiding in those cracks. And until you call them out, they'll keep running your life from the shadows. You don't need more time. You don't need better conditions. You need to get brutally honest with yourself. Where are you letting yourself off the hook? Where are you negotiating with your own weakness? Where are you choosing ease over excellence? Excuses often wear the mask of reasons. And the difference is this: reasons have limits, excuses don't. A reason says, I was sick for 2 days. An excuse says, I can't ever seem to stay on track. One is situational, the other is identity-based. Be very careful not to let temporary setbacks become permanent narratives. The moment you start labeling yourself as someone who can't focus or isn't disciplined, you're building a cage from your excuses. And cages don't need locks. If the prisoner believes the door doesn't open, you break the excuse cycle by getting honest, getting uncomfortable, and taking full ownership. No blaming, no waiting, no hoping. You get up. You fix what needs fixing. You start where you are. You commit without conditions. And when the excuse shows up, and it will, you override it with action. That's how you kill it. Not by debating it, not by journaling about it. By doing the exact thing it tells you not to do. That's the rep. That's the work. That's the path to becoming unshakable. Every excuse you destroy is a version of yourself you reclaim. The focused one. The bold one. The disciplined one. The version of you who doesn't hide behind reasons but rises in the face of them. That person isn't created by inspiration. They're created by refusal. Refusal to accept less. Refusal to give in to weakness. Refusal to be defined by limitations that were never real to begin with.